monitoring, and we are live in our weekly broadcast of ACFIM Talks. We shall be discussing the subject of overcoming an electoral loss in Uganda. We all know that today in Uganda, politics is highly commercialized, and we notice that there are many political participants that either spend money and lose or spend money and win. But majorly on the losers, what could be some of those issues that they do face in an event of an election loss? We are going to be discussing that subject along with our fellow ACFIM staff, including the gentlemen you see on screen. I will ask them to introduce themselves before we go on. Kindly introduce yourselves. Abel.
Good morning, Eddie. Thanks for that brief introduction. My name is Abel Esiru. I work at ACFIM as a Research and Youth Engagement Officer. We have been engaging various stakeholders in the previous few months, especially monitoring elections countrywide, and we have seen very many things that have transpired, and that's why we are here today to share with you some of the experiences we have witnessed and also the findings we have for you, especially on how some candidates have been battered, shattered, after spending and tattooed.
Thank you. Yes, Ndugu.
Oh, thank you so much, Bwana Eddie. A very good morning to the viewers, wherever you are, depending on the country that you are in. Good afternoon, those ones who are in Europe. It's a great pleasure to be a part of this very show. My name is Gerard Koraneza. I'm a project assistant in charge of civic engagement. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to have a great discussion with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abel and Gerard, for those brief intros. Now, viewers, wherever you're watching from, we know that Uganda's politics has since become commercialized. If we can take a brief history of what is transpiring in Uganda in terms of commercialization, we're aware that commercialization of politics in Uganda started way back in 2006 when we had multi-party dispensation coming in place, and since then we have started looking at money exponentially increasing in political processes. You recall that in 2011 we had inflation in Uganda. Overhead inflation was over 35%, majorly because of the previous electoral process that we have had. Remember the walk-to-work protests that were common on the streets of Kampala, majorly rising as a result of the cost of living and cost of inflation on goods and services. You recall in 2016, Uganda ACFIM studies indicate that Uganda spent about 2.4 trillion shillings in managing an electoral process for both at presidential level, at parliamentary level, but also at local government level. Then lastly, in the previous elections in 2021, which we have just concluded, we are looking at an overly commercialized electoral processes. Our statistics for November and December indicate, for example, that so far by then, your political participation at presidential, parliamentary, and local government level, over 500 billion shillings was spent on the same. Now, the question is, most of these candidates either spend and win, but of course, some of them spend and lose. Today, we shall be looking at how can we overcome the aftershock of an overly commercialized electoral process, especially when you have lost. But before we go into that, we want to look at what could be some of the factors that increase the cost of electoral participation to the level of looking at how much money has been spent in electoral processes. I'll ask Abel to take on and probably dissect for us what could be some of those factors that increase the cost of electoral politics in Uganda. Abel.
Thank you, Eddie, for that. First of all, what I do know and what I've seen so far in Uganda, what is affecting us most is that when you look at, I want to particularly look at the candidates who contest under parliamentary level. We have realized that over time, most of these candidates have decided to redefine their role. Instead of legislating, they have decided to now come up and decided to change their role into service providers. We now see that most of them have decided to buy ambulances. They are now constructing roads. They are now even constructing churches. So this is one of the areas that is commercializing electoral process and increasing the cost of politics in Uganda. This thing of redefining the role of candidates, instead of them concentrating on what they are supposed to do, constitutionally they have decided to take over what government is supposed to do. So this is escalating the costs. And also we have the overbearing electorates. You find that instead of them holding their leaders accountable and working towards a community good, they want leaders to solve their individual problems. You find that leaders are held hostage to solve problems like paying school fees, medical bills, and also contributing to various social activities which are personal and not for community good. So you find that such instances are escalating the cost. So leaders are now looked at as banks, whereby whenever they see in the community, you have to contribute something, regardless of whether you have money or you don't have money. So all these things are escalating the costs of campaigns. But also another thing which you should not ignore is that currently Uganda does not have a law that terms down how much one should spend or how much candidates should spend or political parties should spend. So we don't have contribution limits, we don't have spending limits. So all such things are affecting our electoral democracy and escalating the costs of campaigns in our country.
Thank you, Abel, for that analysis. In the previous study that ACFIM has conducted, we have realized that for the last, for about 12 months between July 2019 to around November 2020, the cost of pre-campaign was 250 million shillings. But you realize that there were disparities in terms of how much money candidates or contestants in Western Uganda and Central Uganda spent in comparison to what candidates in Eastern Uganda and Northern Uganda spent. What could be some of those disparities, causes for disparities in the cost of spending? When you look at a candidate in Western Uganda spending higher, but also a candidate in Northern Uganda spending lesser, from the perspective of Bwana Ndugu Gerard Koraneza. What do you think about that scenario?
Thank you so much, Bwana Kainda. Indeed, spending varies in Uganda today. Elections in Uganda, candidates have approached it as a do or a die factor. Candidates in these very regions, they have gotten electorate that has gotten different demands. Regions in this very country have set the bars. Like Public Policy Institute launched a report last year in 2020. It showed that the average cost for an MP, to maintain an office in this very country is 32 million. But they went ahead and then they informed us that in these regions, like for instance, in the central region, an MP to maintain an office, he needs 48 million, that is equivalent to 14,000 US dollars. So these regions, they've gotten different demands. The electorates have unique challenges. There is a problem of service delivery within this very region. You get? So there is a bar that these regions that we've seen that they've set like for instance, in the Western Uganda, their demands, they are completely different from the demands of Eastern Uganda. Electorate in Eastern Uganda, they have unique demands. You get? I believe. Sorry?
I mean, Koraneza, could that be speaking to the levels of development? For example, when you look at the fact that you state that a voter in northern and eastern Uganda, the demands are lesser compared to the voter in central and western Uganda, could that speak to the varying levels of development that we are looking at a central voter and a western voter with higher development, with a higher development index as compared to that of eastern and northern Uganda? Abel, what is your take on that?
Okay, thank you, Eddie, for that. For me, I want to look at it in a different perspective. What has caused that disparity? Especially, I want to look at it starting from our political party primaries. We all know that Western Uganda is mainly dominated by NRM. And what triggers mainly the spending in Western Uganda is mainly during the NRM primaries, as we witnessed. Most of the candidates do believe that when they have the NRM party flag, when it's almost obvious that they don't need to over-campaign during the general campaigns. Because we witnessed candidates spent mainly more money during the party primaries in Western Uganda compared to what they spent during the actual campaigns. And most of those candidates who were NRM, who had the NRM flag, we have seen most of them went through. So I believe that the issues of political party affiliation had a huge impact in causing the disparity. And you know that in some regions, other parties have appreciated they can vote you basing on your competence, basing on whether you belong to a different party, but what you can bring on board. But it's slightly a different case in Western Uganda, mainly because we have witnessed that over time, people have been voting only mainly candidates who are NRM, from the NRM party. Regardless of that, there are also other factors that have caused that the costs in Western Uganda escalate or are higher than other regions. If you look at the level of development, Western Uganda is a bit more developed than some other areas that have been in turbulence for a long period of time, like Northern Uganda. Northern Uganda has been, over time, having issues of war, and people have been running up and down, so you cannot compare a place that has been having political turmoil for over 21 years and just now catching up and trying to develop, people trying to set up the business, and you know all the business community has an impact in contributing to who comes. So candidates also source money from this business community. So if you look at the business perspective, there are more people who are doing business in a higher scale in Western Uganda compared to other regions. So I think it's more...
Yes.
The point that I wanted to try
to yes.
These regions, they've gotten challenges to do with the public service delivery. Like for instance, if you can look at a region like Western Uganda, they've looking at the development, their services, they need, like an MP needs, to keep, servicing like a road, in terms of road network, at times, the local government, if you can look at the budget allocation, at times they usually get the lion's share in terms of the budget, and we are looking at the, private sector, people in the private sector who wants to run for a constituency, so they come and, keep servicing, some of those various services. But regions like Northern Uganda, Western Uganda, at times, they are, in the local government, there are no services, to keep on injecting in, but the MPs, they need, to keep maintaining the costs, of these various services. So the challenge of service delivery, like in the public, in the local government, it is one of the factors that has escalated, the cost of financing, in elections.
For purposes of expounding this discussion beyond social services, we know that in the previous election, we have had a hybrid election where we have had use of media as one of the modes of reaching out to the electorate. But also we have had the cost of campaign administration moving up. You recall that many of the candidates had agents and managers on ground doing house-to-house, door-to-door campaigns, reaching out in consultative meetings, facilitating persons who are on ground collecting, trying to woo voters on their sides. Probably for purposes of the viewer, we need to take this discussion further from the social perspective, social service perspective, towards identifying how campaign administration, campaign publicity, voter inducement, direct cash buying, vote buying, voter hospitality has and tourism has increased the level of political participation. To bring into perspective how money has influenced greatly the way candidates have been looking out for votes. Like I mentioned, if we say that by December 30th, candidates in the 29 districts that were been monitoring at ACFIM have spent over 500 billion shillings, and we're looking at about over 650 candidates we've been tracking at parliamentary, presidential, and local government level. It means that on average, we're looking at each of these candidates spending over 300 million shillings in an electoral race. We bring in the discussion of what is the source of this money, probably. What could be some of the challenges these candidates are experiencing to identify these sources? You shall realize at the end of the day, as candidates, they either have savings, or they have sold out property, or they have acquired bank loans, or they have gotten money from money lenders to finance some of these campaigns. We know that this has far-reaching effects in terms of the candidate himself, especially those who lose. Unfortunately, we wanted to bring in one of the contestants that stood for Kyadondo East constituency, that is Honorable Kantinti Apollo. He couldn't be with us, but he wanted to share with us experiences of how he thinks these elections have been costly in terms of the loss. But from the perspective of our energetic young men, what do you think has been some of the effects of these to these candidates, and how could they come? How can they be able to come over this loss? We understand some of their businesses have collapsed. Some of their businesses have been taken by lenders or banks. How can they come up with a loss from this electoral spending? Yes, Abel, if we can start with you.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. What I know, most of these candidates join the race without first of all understanding what they are heading for. They don't do research on their constituency to understand what magnitude of problems do the people in their constituency face, what amount of money do they require to run an effective campaign. So they just run into a campaign and they deceive them. They consult some of these money-hungry campaign managers and agents who use the election season as an opportunity to get money or extract a lot of money from candidates. So if you go to a race when you have not understood the terrain of a current political terrain of your own constituency, you will be forced to look at things in a different perspective. We find that most of the candidates who join the races end up selling their properties because they have not put an estimate, or they don't have a budget first of all to run their own campaigns. So they end up getting money from various sources. That's why you see most of them end up going to money shacks, like the money lenders. They go and borrow money from the banks. They sell off their properties. They have not sat down and organized themselves. They don't have a proper budget. They don't have a team that manages that budget and finances things that are genuine. Because in an election, there are legitimate costs and illegitimate costs. So you find most of the candidates end up spending their money in illegitimate costs like bribing voters, paying for donations, buying iron sheets for various churches, which is not necessarily needed in an election campaign. You only need to have your public address system. You need to print out your posters. Those are legitimate costs. You need to have fuel to move around. But you find candidates are being hoodwinked by some of these money-hungry campaign agents. They tell them we are being overshadowed in this area or this parish or sub-county, so we need this amount of money to make sure that we take over that area. So a candidate is put under a lot of pressure. So they end up releasing a lot of money, and when they find that someone is spending from the start, even before campaign officially started, someone starts spending 2 years before even an election campaign start. So you find midway the election campaigns, some of them have run out of money. The only alternative they will have is to sell off their properties, borrow from friends, and if you're a candidate whose party does not contribute to your campaigns, that means you are going to have a lot of shocks after election, because first of all, you will not have any money remaining with you. You've sold off your property. You're going to start from scratch. If you're not strong, you might end up even committing suicide. We have seen some of them even don't no longer pick up calls from the constituency. They run away from their constituency. So overcoming election shocks, they need to understand, first of all, what are they going for? They need to plan prior. They need to come up with a budget. They need to have a team that is transparent enough to manage the campaigns effectively, without having those people who are going to come as moles in the team just to extract money from you, to milk you, and by the end they go after a campaign. We have seen most of the campaign managers after elections, some of them construct houses. And where you ask yourself, where did they get the money from? They have extracted the money from the candidates. And the candidates whose money has been extracted at the end of the election doesn't even have a house, cannot even rent, can't buy food for his family. So these candidates need to understand, first of all, where are they heading to? Do you have money that's going to run campaign, independent of money that's running your businesses? So they need to have called a surplus budget. Use surplus money to run your campaign, not the money you're going to inject in your business and end up using all the money to avoid.
Thank you, Abel, for that submission. Taking on adding on to that, Bwana Koraneza, when these candidates are spending on electoral processes, do they mean well for the electorate? A case in point in Koboko, where Honorable Aniti, after losing to a young man, she withdrew the ambulances she had given out to the community. We have seen the same happening with Honorable Kasolo in Rakai. When they're spending money, do they mean well to the electorate? Do they have that heart of their hearts to spend on the electoral race, or they're actually engaging in business based on those examples? What is your take on that, Ndugu Koraneza?
Thank you so much, Eddie. Politicians in this very country, they have viewed politics in the business perspective. They are looking at it in terms of investment. Politicians they are looking at the moral, the emoluments which are attached to this very public office. So they have made it as a point to spend, as in investment, so that they can just get, the returns when they reach in these very public offices. I'm not surprised to candidates who have embarked on the crude means of, retracting these donations, these, ambulances that they have given to electorate, because they are looking at it in a business perspective. So all of these social services that they are, that they are giving out to the people, they're not giving it to the people in a good spirit. The general public, they need to be educated. We lack civic consciousness within our electoral system. I think civil society and the government, they need to do a lot, to educate the electorate on these donations and on these social services that are being extended to electorate. Politicians, they have taken the advantage of the of the system, the service delivery. I mean, the public sector that is stagnating due to corruption tendencies that within the local government. So there are some of these very loopholes within the electorate. Like, for instance, there are no hospitals, there are no schools, and they've redefined their roles. They've assumed these very roles, to give them out, to the electorate. So I'm looking at it, extending these very services to the electorate, not in the spirit of leadership, but in the spirit of business perspective. So I believe that Uganda needs to put in place, like, for instance, a campaign finance, regulation, at least, to limit these kinds of people who just come with a business mind. They want to reap a lot from this very public office. So if we can put like a legislation, then we set a standard, and even, by the way, reducing all these very immoral emoluments that are attached to this very public office. I think we can have service delivery. We can see service delivery by reducing these politicians who go to politics with the intention of
Before we go for a commercial break, Abel, when Koraneza mentions that the candidates or the electoral participants are taking on the role of the state, where is the state in this? They're supposed to provide these services. Where are they? Where can we see a welfare state in the electoral process, in the development process of a voter?
I think when we see the candidates, especially the members of parliament, redefining their roles and they end up becoming service providers, that directly shows you that the state is not present in terms of service provision. So the candidates come into play to try to fill in the gap which has been left by the government in place. The government literally is supposed to provide these services because the taxpayers who are the electorates pay their money, and then they expect to be given something in return. But since there, as Gerard has already mentioned, there are a lot of emoluments that are attached to these political offices. So politics is more of now a lucrative casino where people just go to loot and fulfill their own individual selfish motives, but they do not look at it as a chance to offer services to the electorates. Because first of all, I ask myself each and every time that, why is that if you're offering an ambulance to a community, you have to emblazon on it and put a lot of images of yourself as a candidate, vote for me. If you're giving it in good faith, give it without emblazoning it or painting it with your names, donated by so and so. And what makes you to go and even an extra mile of retrieving it from the constituency if you've given it in good faith? So I think moving forward, the electorates need to start rejecting, first of all, these donations which are being given to them, and they demand for what is right by telling these candidates, you know what, we elected you, but you're not the one who's supposed to give us services. You are supposed to lobby for these services from the government and bring them down to us. But now if you see you using your own money, that means it seems you're getting a lot of money. That means we need to maybe trim the benefit these people are getting so that they cannot even be able to afford or purchase some of these services, because now they are making government fail to perform its duties, and they are now creating their own sub-governments, which is wrong. We cannot develop to a welfare state like that.
Thank you, Abel, for that. Viewers, we shall be going up for a break. After the break, we shall be looking at what does it take to incur a loss in an electoral process, but also we shall be looking at how does commercialized electoral politics impact on the youth. Why are the youth not engaged in electoral processes? What does it cost for a youth to participate in electoral process? And many others. We shall look, let's come back after this break.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.
Thank you, viewers, for coming back from the commercial break. Yeah, we need to pick up the discussion from where we left it. We're talking about overcoming the aftershock of an election loss. Previously, we said that in the previous election, a candidate spent a lot of money on electoral processes. We mentioned in our first segment that in the pre-campaign, in the 70 constituencies that ACFIM monitored, candidates spent over 250 billion shillings within 1 year on various areas, including social services, including publicity, administration, among others. But also by December, candidates had spent over 500 billion shillings on the presidential, parliamentary, and the local government elections races. Now, the question is, when these persons spend this money and they lose, how do they overcome this shock? Like I mentioned, we were supposed to have Honorable Kantinti, who has not been able to make it. But you recall that Kantinti was in 2017 a candidate in Kyadondo East constituency, where he won, and Mike Sebalu contested the election win, and the court had to nullify the election. We had to go into a by-election, which Honorable Kantinti lost. With costs, he was supposed to pay over 108 million shillings in cost. But before that, he had also acquired a loan in Standard Chartered Bank of 300 million shillings, which he failed to service after losing his electoral seat in parliament. And the whole world was turning against him. So these and many more are some of the effects of over-commercialized electoral process. But the question is, how do candidates overcome this? I was watching one of the shows on one of the TVs in Uganda yesterday, and one of the MPs, for purposes of knowledge, Honorable Odonga Oto, mentioned that I've been in parliament for the last 20 years, since I was in university. 20 years ago, I've been an honorable MP. Now I've lost. I have spent, I have lost. I have to go back into normal life. I don't know where I start, what I need to do, and many other things. How do we ensure that these candidates overcome the election shock? Abel.
Thank you very much. You have shared an interesting finding from Honorable Dongato, but I also wanted to share with you one thing before I can respond to that question. I watched an interview where Honorable Mbaraka Munyagwa, the Kawempe South MP, who has been hosted by a new candidate, telling the journalists that is no longer, ever since he has been voted out, it's no longer going to be people's property. He used to be overburdened by a lot of demands from the community, so now he's going to go back to live his normal life. So he's no longer going to spend on helping people. He was even casting them why they voted him out. So he said he's no longer even going to attend their burials or contribute to anything. So I think moving forward, how to overcome this election shock is that these candidates have to appreciate that spending a lot of money during campaigns does not necessarily make them win. First of all, that's what they need to understand. So they need to start knowing that even after spending, no one is going to come and help them, because some of these electorates believe that these people go there to eat. So whenever they come back after campaign to seek for more term in office, they also have to eat. So the eating is something that is now in the heads of the electorates, and also the politicians believe they cannot go there without money. So they have to first of all redeem themselves and accept that they have lost, and they integrate themselves to the community members. Those who still have a good heart can continue helping people if they have their money, because they started something. So they can still continue if they have goodwill, they help the people, but they should not necessarily desist from participating in political processes in the community because they have been voted out. They start hiding from people. So that's how they can gradually start coming out of that election shock, and they should not, because most of them are not indebted. They are going to be running away from the people who demand them. They should be open and tell them, you see, I've sold off everything. I don't have money right now. Maybe these people who have taken away things from me, the community members can also come into play and try to help some of these people by contributing some money back to them, and they be able to recover some of the things they have lost. And they warn them that next time when you're coming for an election, don't spend like there's no tomorrow.
I want us to look at this from the perspective of civic engagement. In the previous election, we have seen over 300 honorable members of parliament, of the 10th parliament, being trounced. We are likely to see a new shape of parliament come May this year. But one of the issues I've had the president say that those persons who lost, they should create either a circle, a group, or a fund is going to be created to ensure that they now cater for questions to become poorer. Or do we go to elections to serve? I mean, politics to serve or to become poorer? What is it that a politician can take out of this scenario? Ndugu Koraneza.
Thank you so much, Bwana Eddie. Indeed, looking at in a perspective of civic engagement, you know, we should tell the MPs and the leaders in the local government that election is not a spending war. You know, leadership, you need to go to this very public office to offer service, not to do business. And they shouldn't look at leadership, you know, in a business perspective. One thing that they need to do, they need to think of bringing in place at least a law that regulates all of these expenditures. Otherwise, the businessmen who have, you know, people are going to run away from, you know, business, and then they're going to come, you know, to run to these very public offices. And indeed, they are going, you know, to give money, and then the electorates, they will just get the money and then send them. And they go in the parliament to do their own stuff. So I'm looking at it in the angle of civic education. We need to educate the electorate, and we need also to tell the MPs not to redefine their roles. Their roles is only, you know, registration and the oversight. Otherwise, these overwhelming demands of the electorate, they are too big for them. It is really surprising and puzzles the people to find the whole MP, the cabinet minister. You saw recently in the by-elections in Shema, the minister of information and the minister of
Science and innovation.
Science and innovation, writing to the president, you know, pleading him for a bailout. That is very shameful. So we need to engage the MPs and appreciate the problem, because some of them, after a given election, as you saw ACFIM last week, one of the candidates testifying right now, he's homeless. He doesn't have, what to feed his family. His family has been battered and shattered, and there are a couple of them, they are there. So looking at the circle, maybe that's a very good initiative for MPs who are losing. But before you come up with a circle for the losers, why can't we put in place a law to regulate, campaign financing? Why should an election be a do or a die affair? Yet you're going to serve, the people, you're going to serve your electorate. So they shouldn't look at leadership in the business perspective.
Thank you, Bwana Kuraneza. Abel, I want to look at it, put this into the youth perspective. We know that Uganda is 75% of the population is youthful, and we expect the youth to have taken on the mantle. Remember that right from 2006, 2011, 2016, the president has continuously mentioned that the youth must be brought to the foreground to ensure that they participate in these political spaces. Why do we see youth not being able to do two things? One, engage actively in political processes as leaders, as contestants. How does the commercialized electoral processes or politics in Uganda how does it affect the youth?
Thank you, Eddie. First of all, before I respond to that question, I want to go back. You were talking of the president planning and other leaders planning to create circles for these losing candidates. First of all, I want to ask, where is that money going to come from? Is it taxpayers' money, or who is going to finance that circle? So you see, these people should learn to appreciate that politics is not all about money. They should learn to go there and front their political ideologies or ideas, not fronting themselves using money and looking like they are the only people who need to stand. And after losing an election, they run to the president, who is almost like the alpha and omega of the country, begging him that now we have lost, we need promotions, we need to be credited for jobs somewhere, and we also regain. As we have always told them, if we don't tame this monster, which is escalating each and every electoral cycle, we are not going to overcome some of these shocks. So we shall see people who are always, after losing an election, running to some offices begging that they need circle, they need to be bailed out. So we need to regulate this monster that is growing. On the youth, we have seen youth participate in politics in various ways. First of all, there are those who have been participating in form of campaign agents. We have seen Kyadondo dancers, poster boys and poster guys all over, those who are engaging in violent acts. But there are also those ones who have been engaging in as candidates. But as you have mentioned, the playing field is not of first level for the youth. Most of them just leave campus. Most of them are just anxious. They just want to participate in politics, but they have not understood that with the so highly commercialized nature of our politics today in Uganda, they cannot be able to participate effectively without resources, because the society is poverty-stricken. So you find that most of the time, whenever you go to a constituency to ask for votes, the first thing they will ask you, do you have money? So youths are always blocked because most of them don't have money. And also our political parties are playing a big role in making sure that youths are blocked out from politics. Why am I saying so? Because we find that most of these political parties nowadays find it very easy to associate with people who already have money, and they give them political party flags to those people who have money, and they ignore these people who are vibrant enough, who can go and front their ideas and ideologies. But someone can come, for example, I can give you an example. When we were interviewing some NRM party leader in Jinja, I will not mention his name, he told us that there was some candidate which came from abroad and had a lot of money. So all I asked for was, I need the party flag. That was during the 2016 election. So they decided to buy off the flag. The party leadership in the Jinja district decided to give the guy the flag and ignored candidates who had ideas. So youths are also part of the category that's always blocked because of lack of money. But even if
continue,
yes,
continue.
I believe that even if money is playing a big role in our politics, youth should not desist themselves from engaging in politics meaningfully. They need to mobilize themselves. We know we have a very big numerical strength of the youth, which can mobilize each other, and also, first of all, start by civically educating their fellow youth and making them appreciate that this country belongs to them. This country does not belong to people who are changing everything and benefiting themselves and not benefiting the youth at large. So they need to engage in political processes so that they can be able to understand how they are going to take over and govern this country. They are not supposed to engage in acts that commercialize elections. They should not accept to dish out money, because most often people who have money come to the youth. They give them the money to go and dish out. During the door-to-door, we have seen that most of the people who have been dishing money at night have been the youth. So we ask ourselves, why should we continue participating in processes that are affecting us? We know the majority of people who are unemployed currently in Uganda are the youth. So if they continue...
I wanted to interject on that. And you see, whereas the youth are demanding for change, but the same youth are, just like I've seen in the previous election, are the agents of commercialization. Because yes, wherever we have had a candidate, the youthful persons have been coming to ask for money, ask for benefits, but they are the same persons that are advocating for change, just like you saw in Uganda here when you had the NOP wave. The same youth that are advocating to support their candidate, His Excellency Bobby Wine, are the same candidate, are the same youth who are going to in other camps to ensure that they pick the money out of it. How does that play on their conscience?
Okay, first of all, if you look at the the youth are heterogeneous in nature. There are different categories of youth in Uganda. There are those youth who are illiterate. There are those who are literate. There are those who are situated in urban centers. There are those who are in rural centers. So you find that those who have a bit gone to school are not necessarily so commercialized like those ones who have not gone to school. And mostly those ones who have not gone to school are the ones that are mainly used by these candidates, because they know these ones, I can just only give them something like 5,000 and I buy them some little alcohol, charge them, and they start moving up and down, they cause chaos, they give out money. So they are agents of commercialization of politics. That one I do agree. But it's now our role as the youth. We need to wake up from the dilemma we are in. We need to not enslave ourselves mentally by accepting these people to use us each and every election. We need to start demanding for accountability from these leaders. So we are the agents of change. We need to educate our all the time about the dangers of commercialization.
You are a youth. What is your take on this? Why have the youth continued to be agents of commercialization? From your own perspective, in a minute, in seconds.
Thank you, Kainda. The youth, they have been left, under the vulnerable of commercialized politics. There is no space for them to participate within these very elections. Commercialized electoral politics has become, a burden to them. So they have, they can't participate due to unleveled ground. So they've seen an option of participation as, being the agents of, agents of this most of commercialized politics. So I believe most of them, they are very unemployed. As you know, the unemployment rate currently is 70%. So they cannot raise even the nomination fees. A nomination fee right now to become a member of parliament needs to raise 3 million. There are very few youth who can raise that money. So there is a standard that we've set, you know, to run for this very public office. So we need, you know, to promote, you know, all this commercialized nature of politics. But, you know, we give the room for the youth to favorably compete for this very position. The moment we leave, you know, the commercialized nature to be very open, the youth, they will keep on, you know, being participated instead of participating within the process.
Thank you, Koraneza. As we come towards the end of this show, want to give light to the viewer. What does it take to have a commercialized electoral process in Uganda? I believe you've been following developments and you have done some research on who spent and who didn't spend. What are some of those cases of candidates that you know have spent over and above $1 billion shillings, for example, and have either won or lost? And what does this mean to their future political processes? If I could begin with you, Abel.
Thank you, Eddie. First of all, we need to understand that in Uganda, every after election has been voted, candidates do start spending. So spending does not start when campaign starts. It starts after someone has been declared as a winner. So we have mainly the incumbents. Most of the incumbents have spent a lot of money, over $1 billion, because they have been spending ever since pre-campaign times up to when campaign started. So if you look at if you track down from when the pre-campaign phase starts after an election, after they have been declared winners and they have been sworn in, they kickstart their spending. And their spending is mainly on development projects. We have seen they construct schools, they do boreholes repair and drilling. They also do contribute to various circle groups. So this spending escalates how much money they have injected. And we have seen also some people who cross from government offices who have stolen a lot of money, inject that money in politics. I don't want to name names here, but we have seen some of them in Western Uganda, how you saw during the party primaries of NRM, how people would go there with trucks and trucks of lorries of food, and they are distributing food. They were giving very many things, and people were wondering, okay, where is this money all coming from? What's the source of this money? Do these people earn a lot of money, or it's just that corruption has taken over our country? People just go and steal and come back and inject in politics to protect themselves from not being arrested. So we find that candidates, especially incumbents, if we are to track from the pre-campaign up to the campaign phase, most of the incumbents have spent over $1 billion shillings, especially in rural areas. I mean, in urban constituencies.
Yes, Koraneza, you what is your take on that? I know you've been monitoring campaigns throughout the different parts of the country, and what is your take on candidates that overspend during electoral processes, and what does it mean to their electoral trajectory?
Indeed, we've seen, you know, candidates spent over 1 billion in different regions. Like, for instance, we've seen, you know, in Kabare, where this Minister Bahat, you know, has spent a lot of money. You know, we've seen scenarios in Ishema where Kateshumba has spent a lot of money, and the good thing they have roasted, but there are some scenarios, you know, some who've lost.
Kateshumba won, and I think
Indeed.
Bahat also won the election.
Yes, they won. Yeah, I mean, they won, but you know, there are some areas, you know, like in Kabare, there are some big spenders. We saw, you know, people like Ajabayanga, those were the big spenders. That side, we've seen the Mary Karoro Okrut in Ishema. Those are the people who spent a lot of money and they have lost it out. There are several who have participated. Of course, people, they can't come out. We've seen Dr. Protazio, they've spent a lot of money in cover, and they've, come up with, the crude ways of, getting back some of these very donations. People like Anita, they spent a lot of money, but they lost, though they have not yet come out to the general public to show the kind of, the financial bruises that they are feeling. We believe that they have felt it, and these ones who have, of course, one, we know that they've, acquired loans. Some of them, they have sold out their properties, and right now they are on the strategies of how can we get back our money. So I believe, like right now, the electorate, the people, the voters, they have no right, to demand these elected leaders into accountable. So it has undermined their political accountability aspect. So right now, they are going to embark on the ways of how to get back this money. And we shall.
Yesterday, I saw a poster of one of the persons who lost, and he's written on incoming MP 2026 to 2031. Yesterday, that person lost somewhere in one of the constituencies around. As we head towards the next electoral cycle, you know that people have started spending right now. How do we shift towards politics of ideas than politics of money in seconds, because we are running out of time? Abel. Abel, are you there?
I think first and foremost, we need to have a comprehensive campaign finance law, which will help us regulate how much money is injected in terms of how much is contributed to political parties, how much do candidates spend, how much do political parties spend. And also we need to nurture and train our leaders, and also sensitize the citizens to make sure that they vote for leaders who are more of ideology oriented than those ones who are more of cash or material oriented, where who come and just give out money without asking them what are they going to do. That's all I can tell.
Yes, Coroneza, how do we rally people to generate politics that is based on ideas?
Yes, every other periodic year of election, the reports by election observers, they have recommended for putting in place, a legal framework that curbs down, campaign financing. So the only thing that we need, that we are looking at, within these candidates who are going to be to swear in May, they need to put in place the legal framework. And as civil society and the government, the electoral commission, we need to do civic engagement. We need to educate the electorate, the roles of the MPs, and let them, don't have these kinds of overwhelming demands. Let them not put the burden to these kind of leaders who are coming in, but let them, get service delivery through their local government that they are in place. Thank you.
Thank you, viewers. I want to take you back from how we started. That the cost of politics has been growing over time in Uganda since 2026 and since 2006, and we expect it even to go higher. We are yet to produce our report of how much it costs Uganda to have elections. But from the bird's eye view, you can see that the cost has been going higher and higher. And we can assure you that from our own perspective, you got that leadership and governance development trajectory is backsliding, because we see a lot of persons who do not have any leadership ideas coming into political circles based on money than politics, than service. But also we are looking at other factors. There could be reasons why some of these electorate is burning for money. But that notwithstanding, it's the role of the state to ensure that these people have the wherewithal of survival, the wherewithal of development, than immersing all their energies on demanding money from the electorate, and from the politicians. And for us at ACFIM, we say we would like to rally you to ensure that advocate for politics that is based on ideas. Look at a person who has ideas and vote that person. And from the experiences of the previous election, we can see that if we do not rally on ideas, we could have a whole changeover of the next electoral leaders that we shall be having in Uganda in 2026. And guys that have been elected, please perform. Otherwise, we're in for a road shock. I want to thank our participants on the show today, you the viewers, but also our guests Abel and Coroneza. Thank you very much. The views expressed on this show are entirely the views of the person that have participated, but not the views of ACFIM. Wherever you are, we thank you so much and have a nice day. Goodbye.
The monster of money politics is eating up Uganda's democracy. When you take money from a candidate, it means you are feeding the monster. Then you become a part of the problem. When a candidate who overspends on campaigns is elected, he or she will not represent voters but himself. He or she will engage in corruption to recover campaign money. Social services will not be delivered and the voter will suffer more. Voter, let's be wise. Give democracy a chance. Do not sell your vote. Focus on the issue.